Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first After the Frame podcast episode. My name is Malik, and I'm joined today by.
My name's Matt.
And we are today discussing and reviewing this week's movie of the week, the first of the three blockbusters coming out in July, Jurassic World Rebirth. Matt, what were your thoughts going into the movie before we watched it? Were you excited for this one? Not really so much. Like, what were your thoughts on it?
Three, big movies coming out this summer. This was definitely my least anticipated of the three. My expectations were low. I was just kind of expecting it to be same old, same old. But comparative to the other blockbusters, this was kind of lower on the totem pole.
Okay, makes sense. I'm the same way. I think for me, I have personally, I got Superman, Fantastic Four, and then this one. After the initial Jurassic Park movie, all the sequels were kind of just the same stuff over and over again. Without even seeing the trailer, I kind of knew what to expect. They attempted to do something different, but as we get into the movie itself and our final thoughts and everything, they kind of didn't really do much different at the end of it. So,
Right.
So yeah, any other thoughts or anything else you want to get into before we actually start breaking it down scene by scene?
No, I'm good. We can go ahead and get the ball rolling.
All right, cool. I'm pretty sure that this movie is not in IMAX. Like, I don't think, at least around us, it's available in IMAX. So we watched it in just regular. I think it's available in 3D and 4DX, but to my knowledge, IMAX has just been bought out only for Fantastic Four and Superman.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google search, and yeah, they didn't release it in IMAX at all. IMAX was reserved for F1, which came out the last week or the week before.
Makes
and
sense.
then
Yeah.
after that wraps, it'll go to Superman.
Yep, that adds up. I mean, this movie, you could argue it could be an IMAX type movie. It has that sense to it with the big CGI characters, and it's a dinosaur movie at the end of the day. Like, it was like nothing. Well, I wasn't bored or anything in this movie, but
You
maybe
weren't bored?
you were. I heard you yawning a few times.
We can get to that.
Okay.
I will say, I don't think for this film, I don't even if it did release in IMAX, I'm not sure it would be worthwhile to see it, because looking at where IMAX had gone before and will go after, F1 is playing in IMAX. That would be a movie I would recommend going to see in IMAX, just because the race and the high gripping intensity moments, but the score is excellent, and just the sounds of the race, like that. I think for me, if it's one of those, you have one of those theaters that has a better sound quality, I would prioritize sound over screen. With Superman coming out, that's big blockbuster. You got Metropolis. That's a big, huge city. Superman flying around. Seeing that in IMAX makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, and same can be said for Fantastic Four for that whole juncture as well. But yeah, this movie, I mean, we both kind of, without spoiling how our thoughts are on the movie, we both agreed that you could just wait to watch it on streaming. I had low expectations, like what you said, and I feel like my expectations were still met. Like, I was not more impressed. I wasn't disappointed. I went into the movie thinking this is going to be another Jurassic World movie and foolishness is going to happen. And I got that. Not as much dinosaur killings as I had thought. I think, once again, I need to actually do the back research on this, and maybe I'll post it on our story or something, because as maybe our audience will know and participated in, we do over-unders for the movies that we're watching, just so people can, participate. And we had the line at 6.5, and this one barely went over at 9. I actually just watched Jurassic World 2 or 3 days ago before this movie, and that movie was like a bloodbath.
Significantly more, especially when the dinosaurs first break out of the park and everybody's scrambling and running away. You see the pterodactyls coming in and picking off people left and right. It's like, yeah, this movie kept it pretty tame comparative to that.
Yeah, but I also think because this one didn't take place obviously in a park, and it was kind of in a secluded area, but at that same time, they had a smaller cast, and the smaller cast kind of seemed, majority of them had plot armor. They have like a few people. I literally have people's characters written down. I don't even know their names. On Mahershala Ali, his name is Duncan in the movie. He has 3 crew members. I have them written down in my notes as girl crew member, French crew member, and asshole crew member. Those are the 3 of them. And we'll get into what happens to them in the movie. I'm sure that people can already guess what happens to them. But yeah, if you're ready to go, we can just start with the first scene.
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive in.
All right. So I have here that the The movie opens up where the screen says that it's 17 years ago, and this takes place 5 years after Jurassic World Dominion. That puts us into the year 2027 in their timeline, which I didn't know. From there, we see, that we're on like some sort of island. You hear rustling through the trees, and then the next thing you know, you think it might be a dinosaur coming through, but it's just a helicopter. They land, and then it shows that it's Isle Saint Hubert, which is east of French Guiana, and that's where the facility, the lab is that opens up this movie. We kind of cut to an InGen lab, and from like the previous movies, we find that InGen was like in trouble with money. InGen actually in this timeline ended up becoming bankrupt because of this little lab experiment here. We see some workers working on a dinosaur called D-Rex.
Stands for Distortus Rex.
Did
Yeah,
they mention that in the movie? I didn't catch that.
they didn't mention it, but so I went digging a little bit, and yeah, it's the Distortus Rex, but they abbreviate it to D-Rex.
Well, one of my qualms with this movie is that this D-Rex, because every Jurassic Park kind of has that one dinosaur. The first one was the T-Rex. Then they kind of just implement like a new dinosaur that's to rival the T-Rex. Like they make one a little bigger or whatever. Each of them are kind of like the star of the show, like the big bad of the movie. Mm-hmm. This D-Rex is in the movie for maybe like, has to be less than 10 minutes of screen time. Like it's very, very few minutes. Even in this one scene, and they kind of just have him in the shadows or whatever, and then you have the big reveal at the end. But this D-Rex was like kind of just like there in the movie for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that seems like a fair estimate.
Yeah. So anyway, we see that they're working with the D-Rex, and then we have some workers. They're getting into the containment, and then a worker is eating a Snickers. And just like how you actually mentioned in the movie theater on some Final Destination shit, his Snickers wrapper falls down, and through like a bunch of stuff, it like flies into the containment with them, comes in through the vent, and then somehow, because it went in through a vent, it like shuts down their whole system somehow, and it creates a whole bunch of anarchy. All the lights and everything's flashing off, all the alarms, and the D-Rex basically is getting out of containment. All the workers are rushing out, obviously, to save their own lives, but the worker who drops the Snickers wrapper is caught in there with the D-Rex, and his friend has to unfortunately leave him locked in to keep everybody else safe. And as you would imagine, yeah, he gets picked up and is promptly killed. And that's basically how the film starts out, like showing kind of what the island's all about with the cross-contamination of the breeds.
Yeah, and I'll kind of chime in a little bit here with what from my notes. So I dubbed this opening as like a forbidden science showing. From my research, from a timeline perspective, the movie kicks off 9 years after the Eric Kirby rescue from Jurassic Park 3 and before Jurassic World 1, from my understanding. But we're on this creepy, foggy island called Isle St. Hubert, where InGen is doing exactly what you'd expect, messing with DNA and really making freaky dinosaurs. We meet their biggest mistake, the Distortus Rex, basically a deformed six-limbed T-Rex, and of course it escapes immediately, destroys the lab, and the whole operation gets abandoned. In my opinion, this scene should have been wild, but it already sets the tone for the movie. It looks cool, but it feels kind of safe and by the numbers, like they went for the obvious instead of surprising the audience.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I think this one, the D-Rex, it looked like to me just like as if like a xenomorph and a T-Rex kind of combined, because it has like that forehead.
Yeah, forehead.
Exactly. So that's like the first thought I saw, because you see a little bit of its face when it comes to grab the worker there. Yeah. But yeah, that's basically it. And then it cuts to, I guess, the title card. It just kind of shows the logo of Jurassic World. And then that's the end of the first scene. So those all your thoughts on that? You got to have everything out of your notes that you wanted to say?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much my whole spiel on that scene.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Cutting to the second scene, it says that we cut to the present day now. And it says on the screen that it's 32 years since the first movie. So since dinosaurs first appeared. We get little physician notes in the movie that tell us that dinos have been struggling over the past few years, that I guess since bringing them back and since Dominion, obviously now they aren't in captivity. They kind of are just roaming around the earth. But the environment is not conducive to what they had all those millions of years ago. So they're kind of just basically going extinct again. The ones that aren't extinct have kind of just migrated closer to the equator. I've written in my notes here, because later on in the movie, Dr. Loomis, played by Jonathan Bailey, kind of just re-explains this. I felt like this whole little part was not really needed. I don't know why they wrote it out and then went on to explain it multiple times in the movie. What were your
Yeah,
thoughts
right.
on that?
I think it was more. It was the fallacy of the more exposition, the better. When you explain it once, the audience already kind of knows what they're diving into. But yeah, going at it over and over just kind of seems like some fluff to me.
Yeah. I mean, the movie wasn't terribly long. Cutting this out wouldn't have really killed their runtime or anything.
Right.
And then this is one of the big notes that I have in this because this is supposed to be contingent on a lot of the plot. The last part says human travel is strictly forbidden. And when you read that, you would assume that, man, it's going to be tough for these people to get to the island. We'll find out that there's literally not even an inconvenience from anybody stopping them except for the dinosaurs, but it's supposed to be forbidden. Our crew and this family just waltz over there in their boats and
Yeah.
no problem.
Like you'd think, with it being forbidden, you'd expect some sort of either border or national security, national guard, anything there, and nada, just open water.
Yeah, Mahershala Ali's character mentions it. I think they do it as like a throwaway line, but yeah, we'll get to that scene, but it still doesn't really add up. So we cut to New York and we see Krebs, which is played by Rupert Friend. He's kind of like the corporate guy in the movie, which a lot of Jurassic Park movies have, where it's like, they just want the money. They're in it for like their own like selfish thing, like trying to get money to exploit the dinosaurs. And he's there, he's in his car, and there's traffic, and it's stopped by a struggling dinosaur that's caught up in like, I guess, light poles and everything, so traffic's backed up. And then he has a line that shows that he has no remorse for dinosaurs, that shows the audience that he doesn't care about them. He's just like, I wish they'd just go extinct already. And then when he turns around, Scarlett Johansson's character, Zora, I've written here in my notes, Black Widows her way into his car, just appears out of nowhere in the back of the car. And conveniently enough, he was heading to meet her. You have any thoughts on any of that so far?
No, I mean that's pretty on pace. I mean, we after that opening scene, the world has changed. We fast forward, I think it was 17 years, and the world is pretty hostile now. Dinosaurs are barely surviving, hiding out on remote tropical islands. And then, yeah, this is where Zora Bennett, played by Scarlett Johansson, she plays this covert operative. She comes in, and yeah, we later find out that she's hired by Martin Krebs to go back to the island and collect DNA from these giant prehistoric animals to help create a revolutionary heart disease drug.
I've written here in my notes, it gets to the cliche thing whenever movies need to assemble a team. Like you see it in like, the Avengers, you see it in the Justice League. It's always one person trying to recruit everybody and everybody's like, no, I'm not interested. And then of course, they're going to join. So that's kind of what everybody goes through in this movie. And then they end up joining. Yeah, like you said, that they are planning on doing this health experiments, like taking samples from different dinosaurs, and it's supposed to help with hearts. Of course, Scarlett Johansson's character Zora says no, she's not interested. When she finds out kind of what it is, she's like, oh, it's too dangerous. We're not supposed to go there. Again, it's literally a forbidden area. And she gets out the car. He just leaves his car in traffic and runs after her.
Okay.
And after they go a little back and forth, he basically just offers her $10 million. And then that was basically the price. And that's it. She's good to go. They get back in the car and they're off to get the next member of the crew. So that was it.
It felt very, what's it called, Mr. Krabs esque. Money. It's like 10 million. It's like I'm in. Let's go. It's like okay.
Come to find out that her character, and I'll talk to you more about it when they have their scene on the boat, but her character and Duncan, Mahershala Ali's character, have like, like they kind of have this life, as you said, they're doing like covert missions. They don't really explain like specifically what, obviously, but their goal is to get this money and kind of just stop doing the missions. Like they want out. So that's what they're driving for. So, you later find that out. But yeah, just very money hungry. And then Krebs is just working for this company that I guess just has like an exponential amount of money and is able to just say, 10 million, you need more, whatever the case is. So
basically a blank check. Like if you need more, done.
Yeah, because I'm guessing whatever samples they're going to pick up from this island probably just going to make them a ton more money. So it's like an investment type of thing. And they get back into the car and then they're off to a museum to now pick up Dr. Loomis, played by Jonathan Bailey. He was my favorite character in the movie. How about for you? Was he yours?
I can relate to that. He was very personable. Of like the main cast and crew, like of everybody in it, he was probably the most relatable and memorable in the cast.
I agree. I really thought just because Scarlett Johansson's like how much of a star she is, the movie kind of doesn't do a ton with her. I guess because it kind of has to juggle the fact that, you know, they have Mahershala Ali and Jonathan Bailey, and then they have like these other cast members, but not a ton is done with her character, really.
Well, from my understanding, like they didn't do much with Mahershala Ali either. Like it was just kind of he was really just the boat driver, and there's a moment towards the end, but outside of that, he's just kind of there.
Yeah, that's kind of a lot of everybody's thing. Because, like, even like, so when we get into this scene, Dr. Loomis, again, like how I said, we could cut out that scene in the beginning. Dr. Loomis explains everything, explains the health orients of the assignment that they're doing. He explains that they need to specifically take samples from living dinosaurs, and that they need to be Colossus dinosaurs. They need to get one from land, one from sea, and one from air. They have Scarlett Johansson's character in this scene and on the boat do a lot of like what some characters do in movies where they just like ask questions so that exposition can be explained. And here she asks like, oh, why do they have to be like huge or whatever? And he says, oh, because, you know, the heart size of these colossal dinosaurs, like they have the stronger muscles, and it means that they've lived like 150 years. So taking that and incorporating it into humans is hopefully the goal of having people with heart defects and things of that nature be able to live longer lives. We get the names of some of these, and I might, the one for like the pterodactyl type one, I think I might butcher the name, are getting from the sea. We're getting the mosasaur, which we've seen in Jurassic World movies of the
Yeah,
past.
the Mosasaurus.
Oh, yes, exactly, the mosasaurus. Then we have the titanosaur, and the air one is Quetzalcoatlus, I think, something like
Coatlus.
Coatlus,
Quetzalcoatlus.
that one. So they're getting one of each of those. They need to get samples of that. And as he's explaining each of them, conveniently in the museum, there are dioramas of them there so we can see the scale and size of them. So they explain that they need to specifically get from living dinosaurs because the hemoglobin deoxygenates seconds after death. The doctor, his character is kind of the one where he's like, oh, like he cares about the dinosaurs. He's in it for the research. He wants to help people. And his whole thing is that not only is it very illegal, because once again, it's a forbidden place, but, you know, he's like a doctor. He's not like a covert agent like these other people. Like, what is he doing there? But for, you know, the plot purposes, they need him to come along, and they offer him money as well. He sits down for an awkward scene where he chews on Altoids, and then he just accepts, and then they're off to the next person. Any other thoughts on that scene in particular?
Not really, but I mean, I think jumping ahead a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Scarlett Johansson's character Zora is teamed up with Dr. Henry Loomis, and then we come across Duncan Kincaid, played by Mahershala Ali. Honestly, I thought that setup was really interesting. You know, it could have been a chance to do something really creative, but again, the movie just kind of plays it straight. Dinosaurs plus secret mission equals action. You kind of know exactly what's coming.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, the next scene they're gonna fly off to Suriname to look for Duncan. They mentioned that he's good at moving things, and that he has a boat, and that's basically, as you said, his character. They don't really give him much other than that. He's just
Yeah.
like captain of a ship. He has like a crew of 3 people.
Hey, at least he's getting more to do than Marvel's giving him.
Yeah, he's probably still waiting around for that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only ever going to be one blade, so we'll see how that goes. So in this scene, they show that he and Zora have a relationship, and they actually end up kind of conspiring. Like it kind of shows that they like were talking on the phone or communicating, and they set up like a whole like kind of ruse to get more money out of Krebs, which played for a good laugh. But once they get the more money, he and his crew just join and they get on their boat. He explains that they plan to loop through Barbados. This is the line I was talking about. They plan to loop through Barbados to avoid government officials. That's the throwaway line that they use to show up. That's why.
So like clear the air. It's like, oh, they're in Barbados. It's like, okay,
Right.
that would have been cool to see.
Yeah. But then I've written in my notes, don't worry, this won't be an issue anyway. And then that's the end of that scene. They get in the boat and then they sail off. So the next scene, it shows that they are after the Mosasaurus.
Mm-hmm.
They're heading towards that island, what we saw in the first scene, where the accident happened and they closed down InGen and everything like that. We find out that InGen did declare for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but for some reason they were still tracking the Mosasaurus. And then when the museum bought up all of their data, They also kept the Mosasaurus tracking. From there, once again, they have Scarlett Johansson's character kind of just being the person there that just asks questions. So her next question is, why is it that the dinosaurs are moving to the equator? And then Dr. Loomis explains that the equator is the closest thing to the climate as 60 million years ago when the dinosaurs were first here on Earth, and that the current air that we have in like our cities with the pollution, the vegetation, they just couldn't handle it. So that's why they're dying out. Krebs tells them about a lab on the island that they are heading to, that there was an accident, of course. The crew seems okay with killing dinosaurs. It shows specifically the asshole crew member,
Mhm.
of which Dr. Loomis is against that. He wants to do it humanely. They show that they have these kind of like darts that I guess are engineered through maybe Dr. Loomis. You need to be within 10 meters of the dinosaurs to penetrate their skin, since their skin is thick, and it's gonna take the blood sample, and then it ejects, and it has a nice little parachute, and it just floats down to you. That's basically all they explain in that. Any comments on that scene there as they're doing the exposition on the boat?
Not really, no. I think the more, pivotal elements in the movie come in the following scenes.
Yeah. So then we go to Zora and Duncan. They're in the boat now and they're swapping stories. We find out that they don't name this person, but Zora lost somebody in her previous mission. We find out that she has a little bit of PTSD joining this mission because it's a little bit too soon afterwards. I don't remember them saying it in the movie, but we kind of see that Duncan lost a kid, like his son or his daughter or something.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a plot hole. Like my assumption is his child died before the events of the movie, but they don't really shed too much light on it. Like I think, there's the Polaroid there, and we see some tendencies from his character that kind of hint at to, why he's doing what he's doing. But I think in terms of that context, I think he lost his child before the movie.
Yeah, I think it's safe to assume that. Any other thoughts on their conversation?
Nothing really noteworthy in that scene, in my opinion.
So we cut to the next scene. So mind you, they are on the way to this forbidden area where the dinosaurs are close to the equator. In the next scene, we cut to a family. Like we got a dad, we got an older sister, we got a younger sister, and then the older sister brought her boyfriend. They're just on a boat and they're just sailing like casually. And they're like, it says like 20 miles south of where our crew just left. And I thought that water is supposed to be forbidden. Like, why would they just be on that water without having any type of authority telling them they can't do that? I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I didn't either. It just kind of felt like they got thrown in just to add. Honestly, I mean, we'll get to it more, but I think really just to pad the runtime and add, I guess, more of a level of connection to the
Hmm.
film. But yeah, like I genuinely was very confused when that scene came on because I basically went in blind. Like I had no idea this family was going to show up, and I was like, are we watching the same movie? Like, what does this have any connection to?
I thought that they were put into this movie not even to be a part of the plot. I thought that they were literally there so that we could, like it's been a while since, dinosaurs killed somebody. We haven't seen one since the opening scene. You don't want people to get bored. These people are here in the water inexplicably. And then, obviously they're going to, like, somebody's going to get killed.
Mm.
We'll get to that anyway. So on the boat, as I said, we have, I don't know if you have written in your notes again, like I did not get these guys' names down. I just literally in my notes have them written as dad, older daughter, little daughter, and boyfriend. Do you have their names written anywhere?
I have them written as the Delgado family.
Okay, fair
That's
enough.
what from my dig into the cast had them. That's their last name. I don't recall if it's mentioned verbally, but yeah, that's their family
Their
there.
last name. Gotcha. So we have the dad. He's on the wheel. You see the little girl and older daughter. They're helping him with like ropes and the sail. We hear the dad calling for the boyfriend who's sleeping in like the cabin below, and they need to switch. They have turns on the wheel. The boyfriend comes out, and he's Mr. Cool Guy. He's getting up. He's
He's like,
sleeping
I'm
with the
not doing all
daughter.
that.
Exactly. He's like, like I'm just really tired. Like, can you take my shift and whatever? And I immediately wrote in my notes, this guy's like an asshole. Because in my head, when I came into the scene, I was thinking, oh, this is setting up for a death. So I thought the boyfriend was just gonna die. Little I know, he's the only person in the movie that has a character arc.
Yeah.
So there's that. So yeah, he like brushes it off. The dad ends up doing a double shift on the wheel. The girlfriend kind of what I also got upset with, and I wrote in my notes. Yeah, she kind of like defends the boyfriend despite the fact that the dad is in the right. The boat capsizes because they start seeing the Spinosaurs, which we find are kind of, and I written my notes again, that they're kind of like the herald, like how Silver Surfer is to Galactus. They're the herald for the Mosasaurus.
Yeah.
So they start seeing those fins pop up. Then the Mosasaurus comes over, capsizes their boat. Their boat's relatively like small. The boyfriend is kind of trapped below in the deck. The water pressure's keeping him in. The dad is like trying to, make sure his daughters are okay. The boat flips over. They're on top. The boyfriend eventually gets out. He's swimming. The Mosasaurus is after him, and he narrowly escapes getting eaten. And then that's the end of that scene. You have any other thoughts on that?
Nothing too crazy. It was just kind of, like I said, to me, it just felt abrupt. And I'm like, what? Why is this? Why are they being shown? And then later on, you come to find out more about their family and what kind of they're doing. But yeah.
Yeah, not really much there. Then we cut to the next scene. I just wrote down that Loomis and Zora have a heart to heart as she's just preparing for the next day. The movie didn't seem like they were fully throwing themselves into the idea that these two characters were having a romantic thing. So I just have in my notes that it's like some of the scenes seem romantic, some of them don't. Like the movie couldn't pick a side.
I didn't really get a romantic vibe. I just kind of got more awkward vibe. Like, to me, like, it was really just platonic, but it was really just kind of like they didn't know, with the situation they were in, they didn't know really what to do. Like, are we friends? Are we acquaintances? Like, I didn't get a ton of like romance out of it, but I was just kind of like confused because yeah, they from my perspective, they couldn't pick where they wanted the characters to go in a sense.
Right. I can understand that. We cut to the next morning, and the family has sent out an SOS signal. I've written in my notes how, since their boat literally was flipped over, how would they be able to get to the deck and do that? But that was never explained. Duncan is talking to French crew member who is at that point driving the ship and sleeping, and he receives the SOS signal and he tells the crew, and he obviously wants to go and rescue them. However, the asshole crew member and Krebs say this is 28 miles opposite of where we need to go. They'll be fine. They sent out this signal. Somebody will come and rescue them. They're not interested. Scarlett Johansson and Duncan and the doctor are all like, no, let's go and save them. We all need to help them out. They're debating back and forth. Duncan says, turn around, we're going to go rescue them. It's his boat. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. And they switch gears. They go and rescue them, and then they pick them up. And then now they're on the boat too. And that's how they combine the two so we can continue the plot.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
No, not really. I mean, it makes sense that they picked them up because otherwise the rest of the movie wouldn't function.
Right.
No, nothing really substantial there. I mean, it makes sense. I'm glad Duncan made the right ethical decision to go help.
Right. This scene, I feel like, was doing the job of putting the line in the sand, so to speak. Like, these are the characters that are good-hearted, and then these are the characters that are not good-hearted, kind of. That's just all I took from it, basically. Then I said that they picked up the family. Again, now we're going back to Duncan and the whole situation with him and this son or daughter or child that he's had. He has this interaction with the dad when they rescue them, and they're all talking. The dad's explaining what happened, and Duncan is giving the dad shit, like saying, like, how could you bring this little girl out here? It's so dangerous. So again, it's like showing that Duncan's character is this guy that obviously has some trauma of losing a child. Did you think the same thing from that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Oh, there's no clarity on there, but Duncan's just being overly protective and cautious.
Right. So as they're talking on the boat, the family comes to find out that this crew is actively hunting the dinosaur that just almost killed them. And obviously they have some reservations about it. They're saying, hey, can you just drop us off at the nearest port? We don't want anything to do with it. I've written here the boyfriend is now comic relief. He has a line where he points at Krebs and just says, this guy creeps me out. Like he's a creepy guy.
Mm-hmm.
That while they're arguing back and forth as to what the family's going to do, how they're going to fit into it, the eldest daughter sees once again the herald of the Mosasaurus. The Spinosaurs start popping up again, circling the boat, and then lo and behold, the Mosasaurus arrives. They're scrambling to try and get the dart gun that they introduced earlier on, so that Zora can go to the front of the boat, take the shot. They're trying to get the boat close enough to 10 meters like they set up before. She ends up missing the first one, but gets the second one. It shoots up, and then Dr. Loomis goes, catches it. They got their first sample, easy peasy. And then the Mosasaurus just goes back into the water as if to say, well, I've served my purpose in this scene. And that's how they got the first sample. I once again like wrote here when he was like tying her to the front of the boat, a little bit of the romantic tension like around the waist. They kind of like linger on that. So I feel like this movie at this point now, we've already mentioned, is that there's a lot of character stuff that's almost set up, but
Doesn't
it's
deliver.
like the movie, like it's like when they wrote some of these characters, they like maybe it got cut, or maybe they just didn't think it worked for the plot as a whole. Once they get the first sample, this is a bit of the character development for Zora. Loomis tells her and suggests, why don't they take the sample instead of giving it to Krebs? They actually like give it to everybody, because Krebs is probably just going to take it for his company. They're going to do some shady stuff and just give it to only a certain amount of people. And so Loomis is just trying to say, hey, what if the science belongs to everybody? We could save tens of millions of lives. Why not just give it to everyone? Zora initially, like you see her kind of like conflicting, like, I don't know. I don't get money from that scenario. I'm in it to get my $10 million. So I guess we'll see how that goes.
It's funny you mentioned that. Like I know I touched on earlier, Zora kind of being like Mr. Krabs, like give me the money. I guess another reference to that. I don't remember if it was from like one of the movies or what, but it's like there's the ghost in SpongeBob, and it's like, hey, do
The
you want
Flying
to?
Dutchman.
Yeah, it's like, do you want to save SpongeBob, or do you want to have 72 cents? And Mr. Krabs is like, I'll take the money. It's like, okay, like that's kind of where my head was at with that. I'm like,
As I said, they drew the line in the sand already. So they were on team, let's go and rescue the family. All the other people on team, let's go get the money. And they just show that it's she still wants the money, but slowly they're like, like I'm still a good person type of thing.
she's inching back to that kind of aspect.
Exactly. Yeah, that's basically what they're trying to go with, but like, it's like a slow progressive type of thing. So then the Spinosaurs, is it Spinosaurs or Spinosauruses? I wrote it down as Spinosaurs.
I think technically it's Spinosaurus, a group of Spinosaurus.
Okay. Well, a group of Spinosaurus, they pop up again. So now we have asshole crew member is getting fed up with all of this bullshit. He grabs a gun and just starts shooting them. And as he's out there on the deck, one of the Spinosaurus just jump up onto the deck and just kill him, just like bite him and just take him into the water, and he's dead. So I was like, good riddance to that character. And in doing so, it kind of makes the boat tip a little bit, in which the daughter kind of almost falls overboard there. The dad catches her, but his leg is caught in between two bars or something.
Yeah, he
something
like
that.
snaps his ankle or something.
Yeah, it looked like to me it broke, like it looked like in the movie, but the way that throughout the rest of the movie it goes, it almost just seemed like to the dad it was like a sprained ankle, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I initially
sprain
thought
or like a hyperextension of the knee or something, like
right. I thought that, this is going to be a lot more of a big deal, because like, yeah, obviously in this type of movie where, obviously the characters are going to be having to run and escape from dinosaurs and
he's just like limping along.
Right. This is barely an inconvenience for him, especially in like the last big scene with the D-Rex and everything. Like, I feel like when they eventually get to the island, he's still keeping up the limping, and then by the time we get to the third act, he's just like, oh well, I've healed. That's the end of that. So yeah, between the Spinosaurus and the Mosasaurus, they tip over the boat, and the crew is all like flying over, everybody's like hanging on. The things are like chomping at them, but just missing them barely, like the typical Jurassic Park stuff. Once the boat kind of gets back into like to even, the oldest daughter runs inside and tries to radio for help, like a normal person. Krebs is having none of that, because obviously what they're doing is illegal and would just like screw up all of his plans. So he starts kind of like arguing with her, and then they start fighting over the radio. And in the scuffle, they didn't show at this point, but another dinosaur hits the boat. They kind of tilt a little bit, and in the scuffle, she flies back, and then she slides off, and she's hanging onto the side of the boat. And then it shows that he kind of just doesn't do anything. He kind of wants her to fall, because obviously she's going to be a hitch in his plan.
She's meddling with things.
Right. He doesn't actively like push her off or anything. Like, they don't go that mustache twirling of a villain for him. He doesn't like go over to her and like do like a scar and push her off. But you see he has the opportunity to go and like help her, and she's like begging for help, and he just kind of just sits there, and she slips off into the water. And then from there, now this is when the boyfriend's character arc jumps in. He without thinking, just grabs a life vest and just jumps right in after her. And then to which the dad just says, well, I guess if my daughter's already in there, I'll just take my other daughter. And they just jump in too.
Yeah,
So
it's like,
everybody's
okay.
just in the water now from that family. So they've just separated. And from that point, then Duncan decides, like, well, the Mosasaurus is too big. I'll take the ship into the shallows. And, it's a huge chase scene. They're evading rocks. They're trying their best to not get eaten, and then he gets us into the shallows, and they end up crashing on the beach of the island that they're supposed to be on, and they escape the Mosasaurus. You have any thoughts on that scene?
So that scene, and I guess the collection before it, I kind of grouped them as a collective whole. I would really describe it as chaos at sea and on land, because their first big encounter that they plan for is with a Mosasaurus, which is cool. They collect their first sample from it while it circles the boat, and then they bump into a shipwrecked family, the Delgados, which, like I mentioned before, to me it just felt like the movie padding its runtime. And then right after that, a group of Spinosaurus and the Mosasaurus attack, killing two of Zora and Duncan's team. It's chaotic, but nothing here really landed with me. To me, you're just watching boxes get checked. I mean, you've got a sea monster, check. A Spinosaurus chase, check. A random family in danger, check.
That's this movie in a nutshell, honestly. I agree with your feelings on that it's like, boxes getting checked, stuff like that. Like, you just like go through it and you're just like, just another Jurassic Park movie. So
well, so I think that's a good point, because I don't know where you stand on evaluating the series as a whole, the franchise. But it seems as though, assuming this is the first of, let's say, a separate trilogy, it's only going to go downhill, because, in my opinion, like nothing's ever going to top the first Jurassic Park. And then I think Jurassic World was better than Rebirth, but as far as everything else, between the sequels to Park and World, they fall pretty marginally below the other one. So this could just be a sign of things to come if they continue this and make it a trilogy.
yeah, and like I said, like, I have no doubt that Universal, like, if it gets I think Dominion, which was the worst of that last trilogy, in my opinion,
No, I agree.
That made $1 billion, and that's probably why we have this movie. So I think the franchise as a whole is just so popular. Like, the IP is just so popular that people, they don't really care about the plot per se or the characters, which is why I feel like this movie abandoned a lot of like the characters, not so much motivations, but like where the story was kind of taking them. I feel like they're just like, at the end of the day, who cares about like the characters? Like, they just need to have cool action scenes. They need to, evade the dinosaurs or die. One of those.
So, according to Wikipedia, which take it with a grain of salt, the budget for Rebirth was 180 million. The box office so far is at 300 million. So, I mean, obviously, we had the big holiday weekend, but 300 million off of 180 is not a bad earnings.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if this makes $1 billion, just because Jurassic Park and whatever.
I think Superman could come close, but Fantastic Four, I think, might be underneath.
Well, not if the Snyder fans have anything to say about it, but that's for next week's podcast.
Hey man, I'm gonna walk out that movie and say it was Superman.
Yeah, and I can imagine what you're gonna say after Fantastic Four too. Now they crash onto the island, and it was almost like the plot knew that they had already. We find out that they already scheduled to be rescued a helicopter later on. So it's interesting that like they were going there on boat. You would assume with the idea of leaving on the boat, but they already kind of knew they were going to crash, type of thing.
Yeah,
so these
they
are
completely wrecked the boat. Like, okay.
Yeah, it's getting to the point of like Fast and Furious where they're just like, don't ask questions. Like, just shut up and watch Dinosaur. That's it. You don't need to worry about all that. So yeah, so we pick up back with the boyfriend, the daughter, and he eventually like gets to her. He swims to her. She's somehow she's completely fine, despite the fact that the Spinosaurus and the Mosasaurus were right there in the water with them. They kind of swim a little bit further away, and the boyfriend gets to her. They're like talking, and she immediately tells him, "Hey, the guy Krebs, like he let me fall." Then the dad and the smaller daughter eventually like meet up with them. They reunite, and then they start heading towards the shore themselves. And then they had talked to the crew, and they said that there was a village on the island, so they're off to try and find this village to hopefully communicate with somebody and get rescued. is their plan. Then we meet back up with the boat crew, and once they have crashed onto the shore themselves, they start like to collect as much supplies, take their backpacks, all of those things with them, since now they're gonna have to travel on foot. As I said, Mahershala Ali's character Duncan takes like a Polaroid photo of like a child, which we can assume is like this child of his that has passed away. And while they're undoing all of the facets of the boat and they're taking everything off, the girl crew member just gets eaten by a Spinosaurus out of nowhere while she has her back turned to the shore. And yeah, just unceremoniously just picked off there. I wrote in my notes here, when she gets eaten, she gets immediately like snapped up and then taken into the water. Mahershala Ali's character just starts yelling her name as if that's just going to help. He just like runs to the shore and just is yelling her name over and over. And I'm like, I don't
It's
think
like
she's
you're
coming
not
back,
doing
man.
anything. Like,
She's not coming back, man. And Scarlett Johansson's character does that at the end of the movie as well. They just yell the name as if that'll save them. While they're gathering their supplies and they've completely gotten over the girl who just died, like despite the fact that she was a member of the crew, Krebs actually goes on to tell them that the lab on the island isn't exactly what he explained before. He says that this was like a crossbreeding experiments lab, and they used it for basically rejected projects. So they basically created this island that all of like the rejected cross breeds are there. And then after hearing that, the crew just gets their supplies. They say, you know, like, we got to do what we have to do. We'll still trudge on. And they get their backpacks out and they just go into the forest. So you have any thoughts on that scene while they're on the beach?
not really. No, I mean, they just kind of keep chugging along.
Yeah, just moving the plot along. We cut back to the family. They're still walking. This is where I told you that the plot just keeps on cutting back and forth between them until they meet up again. I just wrote in my notes, the boyfriend offers them weed. Again, he's got to be the comedic relief. So he offers them weed. They find a set of pipes and they think that, oh, the pipes must lead to, somewhere in this village. So we'll follow the pipes. Zora, while they're continuing to walk on, they get like into a little bit of water and they're walking like maybe knee depth into it. Zora confronts Krebs and says, hey, like, so about this little girl, did you see her fall over? Like, what happened? She kind of confronts him about like the situation. And of course he denies it. He says like, oh, like she was there and she slipped. I couldn't do anything about it. Even though, obviously we know what actually happened. While they're just talking along, we find out that Dr. Loomis studied under Alan Grant from the original trilogy. They don't really go into any further depth than that. They just kind of name drop him. They don't do a ton of like recalls or callbacks to the first 6 movies. I feel like did you feel the same?
I think I picked up on more than you did. So, like, obviously, there's the Alan Grant call out. One, I don't know if you caught it towards the beginning when they're at the museum that Dr. Loomis is working at. There's a banner. You see the skeletons of the dinosaurs. There's a banner in the back, and I'm fairly certain that was in the original. Like, it's got the same color scheme, typography, but that and obviously we'll get to it, but the Brachiosaurus moment, that's very similar to the first film where Alan and Ellie are just like gobsmacked at the sight of it eating leaves from a tree. It felt very similar to that. And then it didn't beat you over the top with the references, but there were a couple that I kind of picked up on.
Yeah. I get those. Like, yeah, we'll get to that scene. I guess like maybe I'm so used to in like, the superhero movies, like with Marvel and most of these other movies, they're so heavy-handed with the references, like they're right there in your face. So maybe this movie did a good job of keeping it like subtle, like making you know that they're in the universe. I don't need movies to necessarily do a bunch of callbacks and Easter eggs because I'm not like the hugest fan of Jurassic Park. So I don't know if you're like a big fan of the franchise or anything.
Yeah, I mean, the first one is probably one of my all-time favorites, but as like a franchise, it'd probably just be that one movie and that alone.
Yeah, as you mentioned before, Jurassic World is solid. I saw the first one a while back and I haven't rewatched it really since. It's like a classic. It's like Jaws or Indiana Jones. Like it's like from that like E.T., all the John Williams scores.
Time period, yeah. You mentioned those. Like, I mean, those were all done, most part, by Spielberg. Because Spielberg did Jaws and E.T. and oh, yeah,
and
he
Jurassic
did
Park.
Raiders too. Yeah, and Jurassic Park, yeah.
That's right. So they have that in common. For these next few scenes, they keep on cutting back and forth. So I'm going to kind of like just run through it quick and just stop me if you have any thoughts or any notes specifically.
Yeah,
but,
no, that's cool.
This part of the movie is literally where maybe, as you were mentioning, that like maybe you got a little bored. This is just very much like they're like, one scene is the crew going through the forest doing something, then the family's doing something in the forest, and then and it just keeps on going. So the next scene I have here, the family continues. The smallest daughter finds a baby dinosaur. The dad and the boyfriend talk about how the boyfriend dived in to save the daughter, the oldest daughter, and we can see that respect is growing between the two of them. From that point, the crew keeps on walking to their next target, which they are going to do on land, the Titanosaurus. Krebs while he's like following behind everybody. Krebs finds a crashed plane, and there's a pilot who has a gun like hanging down, and he just secretly like keeps the gun for himself. He just takes it while they've walked off. It's getting like close. Well, this is where I got like a little like on like the time scale of things. So the next scene is the family like doing that thing where like they're setting up like camp. It looks like kind of in there where they are. It's a little darker, like it's almost nighttime. And it's like the scene where they're like laying up against the tree trunk, and like the two girls are sleeping next to the dad.
The boyfriend's like starting a fire or whatever.
Exactly. And did you interpret that as that being like nighttime? To me, I thought it was like they were getting ready to sleep, like make camp for the night and keep journeying in the day.
That was my understanding as well, but yeah.
But that's not possible because, well, in that scene, the dad and the boyfriend, the character development is growing up. The boyfriend says, no, you rest with the girls. I'll take like calling back to him not wanting to take the shift on the wheel on the ship. Mm-hmm. Now he's like, no, I'll watch the fire. I'll be lookout. You guys sleep. The dad, is growing more respect, like saying you're a good man. He's doubting himself. He's like, I'm like such a screw up. I don't know why she even wants to date me. And he's like, oh no, you're a good man. Like she sees you who you are and all that good stuff. And then, to throw all of that away during his watch, he says, well, I'm going to go take a piss and you can just stay here while I do that. And then in this scene, the little dinosaur comes back and like bonds more with the little girl. I'm assuming this dinosaur is literally here to just sell toys. It doesn't really offer anything else other than that. I think was that what you got from the baby dinosaur? They didn't even mention what kind it was.
So it's an aqualops. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. It's an herbivore. Yeah, only weighs like a couple pounds.
Interesting. Well, we only see just one. We don't see like a family of them or a herd of them. It's just that one, and it just bonds with the little girl, and that's basically all. It's just there to just be like a cute thing, I suppose. Then it cuts to the boyfriend. He's in the forest taking a piss. Behind him, there are these raptor-looking things. I wasn't sure if they were actually raptors because everything on this island is supposed to be hybrids of some sort. They look like raptors, so I put that these raptors are like kind of approaching him slowly, and this giant pterodactyl-looking bird, like it's bigger than a pterodactyl, but like giant, as it's about to like literally eat the boyfriend, jumps in, stops the raptors, and flies away. The boyfriend turns around, and to match the comedic timing of the character, he just sees all of that happening behind him, and then he turns back around and continues his peeing. Then we come back onto the crew as they're looking for the Titanosaurus, and this is where I said this doesn't make any sense. So the crew, where we last saw them, they're coming through that like watery place, all of that broad daylight. Cuts to the family kind of at night. Then we cut back to the crew again in broad daylight again as they're looking at the Titanosaurus. And I just didn't understand like what happened with that.
Yeah, really. So we go from day to night to day. It's just like, There's not as much concept of time.
Right, so that kind of confused me on that one. Yeah, long story short, I've written here the crew is going through tall grass looking for the Titanosaurus. They eventually come up on, I guess, a herd of them, you'd call it. Loomis admires them, and I've written in my notes, Jurassic Park theme plays, just like from the first movie, and then they get the sample. Like, there's really nothing else really happens in the scene. Anything from you on that?
No, not on that scene.
Okay. All right, moving back to the family now. The little girl is now talking again, thanks to the help of the baby dinosaur. She names the little dinosaur Dolores. They're walking, and then they trip down like a hill, but then they notice that Dolores is scared of something. Dolores runs off. They see like a building in the distance, and the daughter sees a raft. And since the dad's, ankle is screwed up, she says, you guys stay here, like watch over dad, and I'll go and get the raft. She goes over there. She like swims across like a small body of water, gets up onto a dock to get the raft. She sees a dead carcass of some dinosaur, and another dinosaur was eating it. That dinosaur approaches her, and then that dinosaur gets scared off. And there's like a napping T-Rex like right behind her, just like having a snooze. For some reason, she still tries to get the raft, despite the fact that the T-Rex is there. Through all of the noise and the raft opening up, the T-Rex wakes up, but doesn't see her yet. She quietly gets the family in the raft, in which case the T-Rex then sees them, chases them in the water. They think they can lose the T-Rex in the deep water, but this T-Rex, unlike the one from the first one, can swim. similar type of action scene ensues where, like very near deaths. These characters obviously have the plot armor because they're like main characters. They're not meant to die. But I quite, and like for all of like intents and purposes, I enjoyed the scene. I thought it was like a pretty cool scene, like out of all the ones that we've seen so far. What were your thoughts?
Well, so I'll say this much, kind of going in summary of the past couple scenes. We venture into the jungle. On land, these things keep moving. Zora's team gets a second sample from the Titanosaurus, and then later on, they go to risk their lives stealing an egg from the Quetzalcoatlus nest for the third. But with the Delgados, they kind of have their own little adventure with the cute little dinosaur they name Dolores. And then narrowly escape the T-Rex with the raft. I'll say this: I think these jungle scenes have some nice visuals, but they're also super forgettable. Nothing really stuck with me because it all felt like it's trying so hard not to upset anyone or take a risk. Like, you kind of know as the scene progresses, like nothing's going to happen to them. Like they're going to find some way to get out of it, and eventually they do. But from a visual perspective, I can appreciate that scene.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think when I rated this movie, the highest rating in like my criteria was the special effects. And yeah, like you said, they narrowly escape. They hide behind like a rock. Obviously the T-Rex is too big to like get in between the rocks to like bite them. And then I've written here that somehow, despite the fact that the T-Rex bit down on the raft, it did not pop and it's completely intact, and they just sail off and they're off to continue following the pipes, but I guess now at this point they're just like floating down a river and hoping they bump into where they need to go. And spoiler alert, that's exactly what happens. So yeah, to your point now where you were mentioning that they need to go and get a sample from the egg, the next scene, the crew has climbed up on top of like a cliff. They're rappelling down using ropes to the nest to get a sample from eggs, because like obviously it's easier to just get it from the eggs rather than like looking around for the mom. While they're pulling the sample, Zora and Loomis continue to discuss like what they brought up in the boat. Like, so if we were to not give it to what's his name, to Krebs, what will we do with it, is what Zora asks. And then he explains like, oh, we would just give it to like all the governments of the world. They'd be able to implement it into all of like their healthcare, and we'd be saving so many people.
Yeah, just make it freely available.
Yeah, exactly. So they're doing the altruistic thing. And then while all that's going on, the French crew member is out there just trying to secure the ropes, and then the mother returns to the nest. And then this is just similar to the last scene. The main characters are trying to evade it. The only added thing in this one is that now while they're evading it, they accidentally drop the sample, but the dinosaur's kind of pushing it around and they're trying to scramble to pick it up. The French crew member throws a hammer at the mother's head, and that distracts it, and then it takes off after him. While that goes on, it pulls the rope and Dr. Loomis flies out. Then Zora grabs the rope to hold on to him while he's dangling down. This knocks the sample, and they're trying to battle for it. Duncan and Krebs are up there. They're pulling them up, and then the French crew member is like begging them, oh, pull me up faster. Then we just see the mama just come up with him in her mouth.
Just engulfed.
Yeah, already just engulfed. Like there goes another nameless crew member just dead. Then starts going after Duncan and Krebs. They find like under some bush, they find like a set of stairs that they just run down, and they just escape the mom. The mom can't fit through there. While back over with Zora and Dr. Loomis, he's still dangling off. He grabs the sample finally, but unfortunately it ejects and it flies off using the parachute. His rope snaps and he falls. And I've written here like, oh, like there's going to be some stakes. No, he just gets like caressed down perfectly by the trees, falls into the water, and then the sample just like very conveniently just floats right next to them. And they get the last sample.
Yeah, that's like the biggest point of plot armor in that movie. Because it's like, oh, something's going to happen. Like, he snaps his leg, he breaks an arm, he gets concussed, something. No, you just splash, and it's like, do. It's like, okay, great.
At the very least, like what you said, like they could have done what they did with the dad, and at least like maybe he breaks an arm. You don't necessarily have to kill him.
Something that would impact the team, yeah.
So just to recap, they show up to a place that's supposed to be so restricted that all of the world's government is surveying it, and they just waltz into it without any issues. They very easily come across all of the dinosaurs they need to get samples from, get the samples basically the first time of asking every time, and they do so without like getting any injuries. They don't really have any issues in this movie. They have a goal, they go and they do it, and that's all. That's it. The plot just keeps moving forward from there.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say this: like for them risking their lives, stealing an egg from the nest for the third and last sample they need. I will say, like, I thought that nest scene was pretty fun, but again, it's not something we haven't seen before. So
Do you feel at this point in the movie, because now with the next few scenes, I would probably say that now we're getting into the third act now. Would you say at this point you feeling like the movie was a bit rushed?
I feel like the important scenes were rushed, and then I think there were things that you could have done in the process of making the film that could have been trimmed. Like, I think, this movie is, what is it, like 2 hours, 13 minutes, something like that? I think you could have condensed it. I think you could have condensed it to maybe an hour 50. Just, cut some things here and there. But yeah, like, I think the important scenes were rushed a little bit, like progressing super quick, just trying to get to the finale, the final stand.
Right. Yeah. I think that, like, it just goes back to what we are already saying. Like, it's a very by the numbers Jurassic World movie. Moving right along, the family conveniently just ending up at the lab where they need to be. The crew ends up getting to the lab off screen. They meet up. The daughter immediately yells at Kreb for what he did, like letting her fall off. Everybody like kind of turns on Kreb, being like, "Oh, how could you do that? Like, what's she talking about?" He of course denies it, says that she's crazy. Then we see him pull the gun on her and like everybody. Zora gives him the case with the samples, and then he handcuffs it to himself. And then he still has the gun. He's not shooting anybody, but he says, "Everybody just calm down, and we're just gonna sit here and wait for the helicopter." And then that's the plan as of right now. They start hearing the roar of I think it was the D-Rex. They just hear like a roar in the distance. And then after that, the generator kicks in conveniently for the lab. All the lights turn on. Music starts playing. They have like, I don't know if it was the same type of pterodactyl type dinosaur as the previous scene, but they have these flying dinosaur, like pterodactyl look. It looks like they have like a gizzard, almost like, you know what I mean? Like they're like some type of pterodactyl type flying dinosaur come flying in and attack.
Yeah, I don't think it was the same ones we saw previously. I think it was a hybrid between a velociraptor and something else. But yeah, they look freaky. They're raptor pterosaur hybrids.
Yeah, exactly. So a few of them fly down and surround everybody. At this point, everybody starts panicking. People start splitting up. So the family goes into like what kind of looks like a convenience store, I guess, or like just a little place like with snacks and whatnot. You got Zora and Krebs. They hide up under a Jeep that's there. And then you got Loomis and Duncan. They escape into a lab and close the door behind them. In the convenience store, not much happens. Like same old, same old. The thing is like hunting them through each of the aisles, and the littlest daughter is like hiding inside like one of the freezer things. The dad tricks it by throwing something to make noise. They all like gather back up, and then they escape into a drain that leads into tunnels underneath the lab. Same thing goes for Loomis and Duncan. They go in there, things start turning on. Duncan sees on like a control panel that like the tunnels lead out to the ocean, and then there's a convenient boat there as well at the end of the tunnels, so they know what they have to do to try and get there. Then they cut back and forth between the three of them. Then you have the helicopter arriving. Loomis tries to flag them down. He's about to go out, and then that's when the D-Rex kind of like returns. It kind of stomps by the door, and he's like freaked out, like, "Oh, what the fuck is that?" Then we cut over back to Zora and Krebs. Krebs is like shooting at the dinosaur, and he eventually gets the idea to just hop in the Jeep and just split. And I've written in my notes here that somehow after this so many years, the Jeep just works perfectly fine. Like it doesn't even stall start, just gone. And he just drives off and leaves her. She's left for dead. The thing is approaching her, but then the dinosaur hears others in the vent and then goes over and gets down into the tunnel and starts following them. She drops down, takes the gun that he left, and goes down to follow them as well. So now at this point, all groups are back into the tunnels. They all meet up, and then Duncan explains to them what they need to do, like where they need to go. The dinosaur shows up, and then she just shoots the dinosaur and just kills it. And then they decide like, oh, Krebs must be going for the same boat somehow. I don't know how he would know that there is a boat at all, but they surmise that he's going for the same boat. So it's like a race. Like if he gets to that boat, he'll surely leave us. So we have to get there before him. And yeah, that's how that scene ends up. Do you have any notes for that?
I mean, we're at the point where it's kind of delving towards the final stand. Everything comes to a head at the old engine lab where both these groups meet back up, and then here, things finally feel like they're ramping up. That's when they get attacked by those hybrids, and then eventually, just when they think they're saved, the Distortus Rex shows up again and then destroys the helicopter. Things continue from there. So
exactly. So yeah, in the next scene, I kind of like just grazed over the fact that so the helicopter does come in, and Dr. Loomis goes up, grabs a flare, and like signals them, and they were originally gonna leave. They like circle around, then you hear somebody on the helicopter say, "We'll give it 2 minutes." 2 minutes pass, they're like, "Oh, let's get out of here. It's too dangerous." He gets the flare, shoots it, and then they're like, "Oh no, we see that they're heading back." And then I actually really like this scene, like how it was shot. It creates like all this smoke, and then you hear the helicopter still coming, and you think like, oh, it's coming in to like land, and the D-Rex just has it in its mouth, like just appears out of the smoke. I thought it was a really cool shot.
yeah.
And yeah, the D-Rex just like tosses it aside, killing 3 or 4 more people on that. And then yeah, that was right before Loomis and Duncan run into the tunnels to escape it. But were those your only thoughts for that whole section there?
Yeah, I mean, I have more, but we'll get to those later.
All right, sounds good. They eventually get to a spot in the tunnel where there's like a bit of a gate. All of them are obviously too big to fit through the gate, but not the little girl. She runs out to go. There's like a control panel on the other side that will open up the gate for the others. At this point, I was like, this is kind of feeling like a video game to me. And she runs through. She goes over to the panel. The D-Rex approaches her and just stares at her and politely allows her to open up the gate without stopping her, which was very kind of him. With the D-Rex looming over the rest of the group, they're all like, the gate's open now. Then we have another one of those hybrids coming in like from behind, like he's trying to like enter in through like a skylight or something from behind them. So they're kind of cornered. Then conveniently, Krebs just drives up, crashes right into the D-Rex. The D-Rex is distracted now, grabs him, eats everything of him except for the hand that was conveniently handcuffed to the samples. They grab the samples and they run towards the boat. And then they have Duncan like do the cliche slide under the closing gate while something's like, yeah, exactly. They do that, and then like Scarlett Johansson like closes it down like right at the split second when the hybrid's just about to attack him, and it's locked inside. The D-Rex is dealing with Krebs like eating that, and they're just trying to get to the boat. Once he's done eating Krebs, he starts putting his sights on them now. Then Dr. Loomis realizes that the D-Rex is attracted to light, at which case now Duncan says that he's going to grab some flares, and he starts waving them around, and then the D-Rex is like distracted. He gets into the water and starts taking him away. At this point where I was like, oh, like he's sacrificing himself. Like they're actually going to kill off like this character. It just eventually goes with them like trying to get the boat, into the water. They're fighting with it. Duncan takes the D-Rex off into a little bit into the woods. He's in the water. It starts cornering him. And then we cut back to the group and we just see the flare go out. So it just, the audience assumes that, oh, it got him. The others eventually get into the boat. Again, just like the Jeep, it still works with little to no problem. The D-Rex turns his attention back to the group, but they eventually get away in enough time that the D-Rex can't swim. They're in deep enough water. It just turns around and stops chasing them. Then I have here, somber music plays. The group is all looking at each other, very downtrodden, mourning Duncan. And then I've written in my notes, in all caps, nope. He's still alive and shoots a flare out into the sky, and they turn back and just rescue him without the D-Rex even seeming to be bothered to go back to stop them. And then one final time, Zora and Loomis talk, and then they decide like, oh, what should we do with the sample? And then Loomis says, oh, what do you want to do? And then she says, I think we should give it to everybody. And that's the last line of the movie. And they see some dolphins pop out of the water, and then the movie just ends. That's it. Just cut to credits. The credits start rolling. That's Jurassic World Rebirth. So what do you think of those last few scenes?
So let's see, where did I leave off with? So when the D-Rex devours Martin, I thought that moment should have been awesome. But by now, the movie has kind of worn you down with how predictable it is. And then in the end, they all escape by boat after Duncan distracts the D-Rex with the flare. So one interesting thing, I actually did some reading after we saw it, and Variety posted an article interviewing Gareth Edwards, the director, just kind of talking about the film, and it was actually pretty filled with spoilers. So I would read it after you've seen the movie. But so Gareth Edwards is actually talking, and Mahershala Ali hadn't yet signed on to the film, but he sent the script and everything. And then between Gareth Edwards and Mahershala Ali, they actually both agreed. The original plan was to kill off Mahershala Ali. But studio executives at Universal, I guess, intervened and was like, no, we want to leave Mahershala alive, presumably if they want to do a sequel or something. But yeah, apparently in the original script, it was to kill him off, and which I think that would have made for a better ending, because I mean, that way Duncan's character actually amounts to something. But then lo and behold, he comes back, and then the movie closes with Zora and Henry deciding to make the life-saving drug freely available, which is a nice note, but it doesn't really make up for how bland the whole ride was. So that's my thoughts on the ending scene. Do you have any notes on the film as a whole?
I have just like a few thoughts. I didn't write all of my notes were just basically what I just read throughout the whole duration of this podcast. I feel like they were setting up, should you use this experimental drug or whatever it is that they're going to make? Should that be used for a corporation standpoint, or should we use it for everybody? Because if you use it for everybody, everybody can afford it. It's free to everyone. People will be saved. You don't even see that Scarlett Johansson's character really struggling with it. She has the throwaway line of joking about, oh, I won't get paid or whatever. It's not like there was even this whole debate. It didn't seem like the character was ever really having a debate, really. It seemed like she was just once he brought it up to her, she was basically on board with it.
Right. So I have a little bit of notes just essentially summarizing my experience of it.
Okay.
And so I'll just kind of skim through that. When Jurassic World Rebirth was first announced, I think a year and a half ago, I was actually kind of excited. I mean, it felt like they had a chance to really reboot the whole thing and take the franchise somewhere new and interesting. They could have fixed what went wrong with the last few movies and reminded us why we all fell in love with dinosaurs on the big screen in the first place. But ultimately what we got was just super safe. This movie is the definition of a soft reboot. It hits all the usual notes, dinosaurs running around, a couple tense chase scenes, some callbacks to the original. But I think the main point here is it never really does anything surprising. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It keeps your attention while you're watching, but the second it's over, it just kind of disappears from your mind. It really feels like the studio just wanted to make sure nobody hated it. And in that sense, yeah, they nailed it. It's not the worst Jurassic movie, but that's not exactly high praise. I mean, it feels like they were, like we've alluded to, it feels like they were working off a checklist rather than actually trying to tell a memorable story. Like dinosaurs, check. Nostalgia. And that's it. Now, to be fair, if you're a huge fan of this franchise, you'll probably still enjoy parts of it. There are definitely moments where it's fun just to see dinosaurs doing their thing again. And for some people, that's enough, which is totally fine. But for me, it just felt more like filler than a real comeback. At the end of the day, and I alluded it on my social media story, but this was supposed to be a big swing to reset the Jurassic universe, and making a baseball reference here, instead it turned into more of a sacrifice bunt. It keeps the series going, but it doesn't really move it forward in any meaningful way. And for a franchise this big, that's just kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. The bottom line for me, I would just describe this film as it's a fine movie. It's okay. I agree with you with what you're saying. It's not the worst by any stretch of the imagination. It's not the best. It's very much right down the middle, not really going for anything different. It beforehand didn't care about it, left it, that still don't really care.
Now, I know as we're wrapping up here, I know you and we have different rating scales. And if, for those of you listening, if you want to follow either one of us on Letterboxd, please feel free.
Yeah, we'll link that in. I think we already have it linked in the bios.
It's linked in the social media. So if you want to look for that, just give that a look. What would you say your final thoughts? Number rating, stars?
I'll tell you my number rating right now. My number rating, so I've gone through, and you know this because you and I have talked about it. I know you've also done it as well. When I decided to start doing the whole reviewing movies for fun, like what we're doing, I did that last year. And then the way my criteria has changed so much and how I rate things, and I tried to fine tune it as we got closer to the podcast, since we're taking a little bit more seriously, everything came out to a 5.95 out of 10 for me. Which is I round up when it comes to the stars. I just round up. So 3 out of 5 is like a 6 out of 10. So I round up to a 6 out of 10. So I gave it three stars out of 5 and a 5.95 out of 10 is my rating. How about you?
That's kind of why I touched on the scale a little bit, because I know ours are different. From a 0 to 10 scale, I gave it a 6.7 out of 10. But to me, that actually equates to 2.5 stars out of 5. For
Right.
me, like, you know, if I was to give it 3 stars, it'd have to be at least a 7 in my opinion.
Gotcha.
So if it was a 6.9, it'd be 2.5 stars. So that's just a little discrepancy in our scale. But yeah, I would give it a 6 points out of 10, 2.5 stars out of 5.
Gotcha. Yeah, combines our score to 0.75 stars, which I think is fair. Like, honestly, I would have rated it lower. I think the thing that literally brought it up for me is the effects. That's the only thing I gave it like more points for, was that. And some of the cinematography was pretty good. Like, some shots were pretty cool. I think we both had agreed that we would tell people there's no need to rush to the theater and watch.
Yeah, I think the only argument I could make for seeing it in theaters is if you have a movie subscription, shout out Regal Unlimited. That's the only way I would go. I wouldn't pay retail value for a ticket. I'd just wait till streaming.
No, yeah, me neither. I'm sure 40X must have been a blast, though. I can imagine that was fun, but I also wouldn't pay for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we wrap up, any other final thoughts for the movie, or anything else that you wanna touch on before we sign off?
No, not really. I mean, in summary, I'd just say, you know, this movie just kind of plays it right down the middle. It does just enough to keep you watching, but doesn't really take any big swings. For a reboot, it feels more like a bunt. Not the worst in the series, but super forgettable.
Yeah, I mean, next week we're on to Superman, Bigger and Better Things. That's my most anticipated movie of the year. I think you had said it's yours as well. So yeah, we'll be back here next weekend reviewing it scene by scene like we did this one, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it's a good movie.
I agree.
That's all I want.
I mean, yeah, hopefully it's, you know, better than this.
I think we'll put on our social media the results of the over under, and then throughout the week we'll put up another over under for Superman.
Yeah,
for the weekend.
That works.
So yeah, so we will see you guys next time. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you all next week for Superman. I hope you all enjoyed.
Thanks for listening.